Okay, so good afternoon. I am Ento Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon to figure out what the future lies for smart buildings and the smart buildings industry. So glad to have you here with us today. Um, in case you are wondering who we are listed, our profiles are listed on mondaylive.org. So head over there. Um, Probably the most important point to note here is that views expressed during the next hour are personal, not of any company or organization. Keep that in mind, and let's uh, keep this session interactive with questions and comments in the Zoom chat. That'd be great. And if you want any of the links that's on this deck, you'll find this deck on mondalive.org. Get over there. So this being April, we have been talking about artificial intelligence all month, and this is the last show on this topic. So after our normal chit chat and news, we're going to do a bit of a sort of a wrap up and conclusion in terms of what we've learned in the last few weeks. So really looking forward to that. Just a reminder that this is as part of a sort of a sequence of themes since February when we talked about OT, sort of reminding ourselves that basically we are in the operational technology business fundamentally, because while a lot of our work happens on the construction side of things, the value that we actually deliver is all about in the operational phase. So that was a great dialogue there. We also learned about IoT a lot, which in many ways are sort of supplementing OT systems by avoiding OT systems, kind of the way it does that, going directly to the cloud or directly to wherever. And then we spent April talking about AI. So one of the things that this group's been sort of discussing the last few days is what are we going to do in May, and sort of just thinking about this, just to give you a bit of a clue, is that these are all sort of transformational sort of discussions that we've had the last 3 months, which have been really good. And it's all really about all of the technologies, all of the different new technologies that we know is sort of all around us. So the sort of a question for May, although we haven't sort of turned it into a specific topic title, as it were, the question really is, what should I do if I'm in this industry, right? If I'm about to get a job or to do some training, what should that be in? If I'm to be filling a job, what should I be looking for? If I'm thinking about strategy of my business or business model and all that kind of stuff, what it should do. So we're somehow going to wrap the May shows to do with sort of discussing that. So really looking forward to seeing how that pans out. Hope that you can be with us next month for that. But before we get there, we hand it over to Mr. Ken Sinclair. What's going on, Ken?
Thanks, Anto. Lots going on. We're preparing a keynote for ControlCon, and I've started this article with some ideas there. It says OT and IoT feeds AI, and then OT executes the AI commands. So I think that's significant because that says our industry is right in the middle of this AI blizzard. So I think what we're talking about is incredibly important. So what I did is I rolled up last Mondays in our AI future control room, was plucked out of the presentation, and also did a clip back to what Luke was talking about, which was extremely interesting in the legalities of all of this. Had good response. A lot of folks poked at that post. While I'm out there in social media land, I ran into this retrieval augmented generation, RAG. So I think the message here is we got to get the RAG out, because what RAG, as I understand, does is it extends already the powerful capabilities of LLMs to particular domains. And of course, that's of special interest to automated buildings and to our industry as we're trying to build an identity. This OT identity is because we've kind of always been a moving mosaic mess of companies that nobody understood, that actually we're all doing the same thing. We're all doing operation technology. And we need to do a better job of presenting ourselves, and automated buildings is attempting to do that challenge. And we've had some great support with our sponsors, and we hope to get more. And the idea that they can post immediately and we can get it out on social media, I think is of use and is helping. The other side of that is autonomous AI agents should be seen more as building blocks of the bigger thing, the AI assistants. And I think what this is the collision of chatbots and with AI. But I think it's an important piece because I'm seeing that that is what's going to give AI a voice, not only an inward voice, but an outward voice. The inward voice and outward voice, I think, are important because as we type in our questions to AI now through ChatGPT and things like that, we type in the question and then it answers it best it can. In a normal conversation, and when any of us on this screen ask the other person a question, the next question back is, what are you talking about? Give me some more context of what your question entails. And I think AI needs to have that kind of a reaction. And I think that's going to happen when AI learns how to talk. Now, someone described this whole AI growth as if you kind of, and Anto and I were just talking about this before the show started, if you akin it to our learning process, we learn as Anto said, we learn machine learning as we follow, as babies, we follow what people do, and as young adults, we do that. And then we switch over and we start the thinking process. So it's been described that AI kind of looks like about a 5-year-old in the way it interacts with us. Increasing its speech capabilities and chat bot technologies, I think, is an important piece. And there's some folks out of Singapore that are working on that. That what do I need to know about RAG is worthwhile to flip through that article. And then the other one is talking about AI assistance. And I think we're about to see a collision of that stuff. And I think that's going to fall, a bit of that's going to fall in our industry. Maybe, I'm not sure. Another one that was interesting is one of our advertisers posted this, struggling to find qualified BMS talent. And the question is, yes, who isn't? And what they've done is they've basically turned this into a global app to access anybody in the world. So as we talk, we are organized into, I was calling them tribes, but somebody has said that a better word is clans, which is probably true. So we all have our clan, our BACnet clan, our Niagara clan, but so people have special skills in those across the world. And what this does is it puts out a call. You basically write a brief description of what it is you want done, and people respond. And then you can contract with somebody to write a program and program a JSON and put this kind of information into it. It was kind of an aha moment for me. And then inside of the aha moment was another aha moment in the fact that when I think of that kind of a service that reaches out to AI, that gets interesting. And the other thing is, do we pay these people by, tell me I'm never supposed to use that word, these people. When we pay them, do we pay them by the hour or do we pay them by output, which with them using AI, they may be able to do incredible things. I think Anno had pointed out that it was increasing his programming time. And I think Tracy mentioned that too. In analytics, he was basically doing stuff in hours that he could do, and it would take him a couple of days. So all of a sudden, the AI multiplier is got to be factored into this piecework. So some interesting thoughts there in my mind. Not sure, worthwhile taking a look at. The other thing is just as well as poking through all the social media stuff is 6G. The United Arab Republics are looking at that. The chatbot stuff was coming out of Singapore, and that kind of points out that as Americans, we got to get our stuff together here and be a little more innovative and start pushing some of these technologies rather than following them. Yeah, interesting stuff. Good time to be in the news business.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. Thanks for that. Got a lot of stuff going on. I sort of highlighting two news stories that I came across. One is Google launching an AI Essentials course. I think it looks like it's targeted at basically everybody. So it's a very sort of general set of courses. So that should be quite useful for people trying to understand all of the pieces of AI. Head over there. The other thing that's kind of interesting is saw this article in VentureBeat about Honeywell, the big company that's obviously in our industry as well, calculating that they've delivered $100 million of value from using Gen AI. What's sort of interesting about it is that it sort of pertains a little bit to what we've been talking about this month. If you look at those sort of the areas that they've sort of highlighted there, only one of them to the right is actually to do with products and services. All of the others is really operational benefits, which or operational value that they've been sort of proving to get from AI. That's kind of interesting. That obviously most of that value is there rather than the products and services. Obviously, we know that there are things going on in the products and services, and it's also mentioned in the article, but it wasn't their focus, which is kind of interesting. So that was my couple of pieces there, and the link board as normal, and opening it up to others to bring any news or thoughts. Rick. Jim, Tracy, Steve?
Yeah, interesting. Since we're on the subject of AI primarily, saw a couple of articles recently regarding I would call it the artificial aspect of AI. Some of you probably aware of this, and I'm not saying it's going to be a direct impact on our industry per se, but it points to the risks involved. So one is the idea of AI creating friends. You need somebody to imagine as a romantic, person to interface with. That person can be created and be responsive to your discussions. Let's put it that way. Okay, but the one that really I found very interesting was a study has been done on, in Yelp and these rating services for products. So a detailed study was done with groups to rate to look at the ratings, read the reviews of product reviews, and determine whether the review is truthful or not versus was generated by AI. And were the participants able to discern the difference? And in the course of the tests and the groups that they studied, it was a crapshoot. 50% roughly was the results of the ability of the audience to discern whether the product review was generated by a person or it was generated by AI. So, and that's just now. Okay, so obviously the ability of AI to generate product reviews that would be even harder to detect will only get better with time. But to the point of what we're doing here, creating, I would hate to see this be used not just to affect the products that we all are marketing and selling, but that the software that we're creating could be done in such a way that it would disguise whether there's actual energy savings in the building or not, as a result of the work that's being done with the control system, right? They could be blaming it on something else, and how would somebody know the difference, right? So just food for thought. But I just found it fascinating that it's gotten to the sophistication already that the inability of people to accurately discern whether an AI review of a product is really any different than a product than the review that was written by a person.
That just bolsters what people say. Anything we can do, AI can do better.
Right.
Yes, that extends to product reviews as well. So.
And we pointed out with Luke last week is the only way to basically prove some of these cases as to whether there's an infringement of personal intellect is probably would be to use AI. So ultimately, we rapidly evolve to the stage that once it's been manipulated by AI, the only way that you can actually check it is to use AI.
There's a whole burgeoning industry within AI to use AI to hide the fact that something was done with AI, right? As well as detect, was it done with AI or not? So, yeah.
I guess the thing that I'm intrigued about is, Ken mentioned it, is when we start to get real agents that start to do real things on our behalf.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's when it starts to get a little scary, because right now we know that we are the actor. We are doing something. When we go to ChatGPT or something, we know that there's a human that's actually doing it. But once we start to get agents widespread, then it's going to be difficult to tell when you call me, Steve, whether it's actually you.
Yeah, exactly. Is it really me, Anto?
Anyway, let us move on.
The biggest indication is the lack of mistakes.
Oh, they can deal with that. They can feed in random mistakes. All right, so we've been talking about artificial intelligence for 4 weeks now. We actually started with sort of an open discussion about Field of Dreams. Build it and they will come, just sort of exploring what AI is all about. And sort of my recollection, sort of these are sort of the things that came out of that conversation. Build it and they will come. Build what? What are we talking about building, right? And who are they? Are they AI, or are they people using AI, or are they AI robots, or what? I mean, that's a lot of that was part of the conversation. And then, what's the game and what are the rules? And there was a whole sort of discussion about is AI a tool or a medium? It was actually quite interesting. And then there's this notion that Ken was talking about, that ultimately things need to physically move, and that's really what we do, certainly in buildings. So that's sort of puts us, at a very important point in the whole sort of flow of things. So we can leave this up for a bit and just sort of talk around this, and we can go to the next couple of weeks. We can do that for a bit, and then we can just open it up. Any recollections or thoughts from this discussion 4 weeks ago?
I'll start off with a comment or a thought after listening to everything for a month and listening to the great experts that we had here as guests through the month. The overwhelming thought that runs through my head is AI is here and there's no stopping it. It's going to become a bigger part of our jobs, our industry specifically. And if you're not trying to figure out where that intersects with what you do, you're likely going to fall behind somewhere along the line. This is a little like when computers first came out or anything else, right? If you didn't learn the new tool, you were definitely playing catch up with the rest of the industry. I don't know if everybody feels that way or not. Maybe thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, Tracy, the inevitability is for sure. I mean, there's no getting around it. It's the question is, in what way is it going to be applied in our industry? Because we as panelists tend to be thinking in terms of primarily products and what those products do, right? And to Anto, when you brought up the example of Honeywell taking credit for the $100 million worth of value they got, largely it was all back office or operational uses of AI, which is consistent with other with things I've seen primarily coming out of Realcomm on their AI related interviews. Okay, so using Copilot and other Azure and other tools like that, they're using it to improve the fundamental operations of the business. We sit here asking ourselves, okay, how are we going to use this technology to build better products versus what we've been using, right? And it's and the question, and it's not as obvious, frankly. It's not as obvious because we tend to lean strongly towards machine learning, which we've been doing for a long time, and we're trying to decide whether the way in which we do machine learning constitutes AI, because it's arguably you can take a position one way or the other. You can say machine learning is the type of AI, and in that case, if we say it is, then we in some ways could think of ourselves as ahead of the game because we've been doing machine learning for over 10 years. So are we going to just improve upon it? Sure. In the building of products, we've identified the use of AI to help accelerate product development because AI is able to help software engineers write code much faster, right? And perhaps to that end, at the contractor level, will AI be able to help those same the application engineers in the field? To what extent will they be able to do their jobs more efficiently? So there's that side of potential, and I haven't seen any examples that maybe you guys have talked about that because I know I missed at least one weekend in the month. But has there been any discussion around the use of AI at the level of the systems integrator?
I'm not sure we specifically talked about system integrators. I don't recall that.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's to me, it's like the two middle bullets of my slide here.
Yeah.
You're describing that we don't know what game we're actually going to be playing. Thinking of game as sort of life is a game and industry is a game, everything's a game, right? The game's changing, and we don't know what the game is, and we're not necessarily sure what the rules are. Is that quite right, Rick? You're into rules.
rules of the game and Field of Dreams. Right. We actually probably have a better idea of what the rules of the game are, and some of the stuff that Luke went into last week was very helpful and clarifying, because the rules and the game are basically what we've been doing for 30 or 100 years, just really, really, really sped up. And that's so we probably have actually a better idea of what the game is. It's just we may not be ready for how fast it's going to go, which is what they say about going to the next level.
Baseball played at 10 times the speed, so you hit the ball at what, 500 miles an hour, kind of a thing.
Well, that's kind of the underlying theme of what we've been talking about for a long, for the last, I guess, 2.5 months now, or 3, has been that we've been doing some really, really cool things with the tools that we've got. And now those tools just allow us to go do it a lot faster. So that's one way to think about it. The other thing is, and you mentioned it, is that there's always a human in the loop right now. And that's the part that I'm trying to think about, is that, the automation at the next level is get the human out of the loop and let the machines play the game faster. And I think that's, as we go into next month, where it's like, okay, what should I be doing with my products, or what should I be doing with my career, or what should I be doing with my company? I think that's the way I'm kind of thinking about it, is that it's stuff we've been doing just a lot faster. I also wanted to say that the most interesting last month was what David Knipkamp, I believe it was David, that said, we don't really even have data in our industry right now. We have automation. And so your bullets are gone. Your top bullet is, what do we need to build? And that's what I think we are building, which is a way for the automation to turn into data that can then turn into, potentially something that AI can act on.
Actually, I'd like to make a comment. I've watched a lot of technologies in my life roll out, and the fascinating thing has always been the ability for these new technologies and new methods of jumping and eliminating bits and pieces. And that's what I'm seeing already, is as some of this new AI stuff rolls out, it completely jumps some of our problems. There was a discussion in one of those earlier weeks about it jumping silos, and the problem that we had silos was that really a problem as much as it was, because AI can actually search over those particular sites. So,
and the leapfrog principle, right?
Yeah.
I'd add another thought. To me, this seems like it's not just baseball being played at a very high speed. It's that somebody moved the position of all the bases, and we're trying to figure out where to go next, right? So it's really,
you're going to need to move them if you're hitting the ball at 400 miles an hour, right?
You're right.
Yeah. It really is significantly. I think this is a significant sea change in our industry, and it's going to introduce new players, new ways of doing things. Even some of the work that, like IBB and all of that, that's just a new way of doing things, right? So there's a lot of change, not just faster, more efficient, but it's really enabling things to change in ways that we might not have thought about when we first started learning about AI.
So yeah, Tracy, I know you've done a certain amount of product development using AI tools from a software engineering perspective. Have you heard or seen where AI is also getting into the automated test software side of things as well? Because automated running of test scripts through automation has been around for over 20 years. I just haven't been close to it recently, so I don't know to what extent AI is poking its head into that area as well, but it would make sense that it would.
Yeah, I certainly heard about that, but I haven't read anything in any detail. The only thing that I did see was executing simulation models faster at at bigger scales, but that would be expected, right?
Yeah, right.
So
Simulation is a hot area that I know in AI.
Yeah.
Jim, you were trying to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that I agree completely with the fact that AI is very important. It's going to affect the industry. I think that from a technology standpoint, we're, as an industry or at large, we're used to taking new technologies and applying them to what we do. So I fully expect that to happen. But what I'm more concerned about is a COVID-like experience, because I do think this is so big that it changes the baseball diamond, instead of being two-dimensional into being three-dimensional. And fundamentally, we don't know what's going to happen with the customers, right? As Office Armageddon happened with COVID, the AI is going to have such a broad impact on how people do things across society that I think it might lead itself to more remote things, remote medicine, remote work of different varieties, remote manufacturing, modular manufacturing, things that are going to disaggregate the necessity to have things in buildings all the time. So I'm very interested to see where it goes from that standpoint. As far as how AI affects us, I think it will be generally adopted. So Keith Gibson is writing in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not baseball. It's some new game.
You know, I mean, we're in the business of providing automation solutions to commercial buildings. What if the principal uses of commercial buildings is going to change a lot? We've just seen that happen with COVID, so we know it's a distinct possibility, but we don't know how. And we don't know which verticals necessarily.
Right.
Let us move on, because after a week on this, we then had a number of vendors over 2 weeks, 2 weeks in this month we did for this. We had Heath from Facil, we had David Knipkamp, we had Alan from Shift, we also had Jim. Obviously, who else did I forget? I apologize if I forgot anyone. And these were some of the questions we're asking. You know, there are going to be lots of AIs, we know that. The whole sort of understanding of the relevance of data, I think people are sort of saying that that's slowly being appreciated. The type of AI that the various companies offer, that was kind of a bit vague, but it was kind of, it doesn't really matter so much, was what I got out of it. It's really the outcomes that you're after, rather than specific technologies, which is not surprising. Accuracy or approximate, that one, I think everybody was very clear that it's really about approximate. How do you handle differently? And it seems that for the rest of these questions, it seems that we're all trying to look at AI as an integral part, just another piece of our offering. It's kind of what I'm getting out of those 2 weeks. Any thoughts? And then we also went to the Smarter Stack and started to put stuff on the Smarter Stack. Not sure that was really that valuable, because we didn't spend that much time. But any thoughts of the conversations we had with the vendors?
Well, I think it was very useful to have their perspective, and how they were, and very encouraging to see how they were in fact using it, and how it went back to that number one question, how many AIs would be involved in a building? And then I think Keith leaped right into how he would price those, and how he was actually turning that into a business model. I found that intriguing, and there's a lot of great discussions. I think we learn a lot from the applications, and those that are applying them learn a lot as they go. Nanto and I were just talking before the meeting started here, and one problem of AI is, one of the big learning clouts is the fact that when we make an error, when we screw up, it's pretty obvious, and we learn from that, and we never do that again. AI, because it doesn't have a feedback loop, is kind of a little deficient in that way. So actually hearing what some of the people were doing I think was an excellent exercise. And I think we need to do more of that. We need more examples, because what I find is when somebody gives me an example of how they're using AI, inevitably I think of, wow, that's neat, but have you thought of doing this, or that we could also apply that to something else? So I think we need these examples, we need these discussions.
Very good point. Other thoughts, others?
Personally.
Well, it was interesting to get the examples of the different way that a few different vendors were using machine learning as subset of AI and getting a little bit of clarity around that. I also find it fascinating how rapidly embracing AI has become like mandatory. And was it Anno that was that talked about the fact that well, we had predicted that executives are going to give you a call and say, "Hey, how are we using AI in our buildings?" And here we are, with some examples of some vendors that came to speak to say, well, here's ways that you could be using machine learning right now, or AI machine learning, because that's what I sell. And whether it's Keith or David or Shift, there are products that are using machine learning right now. And Jim Lee's been saying that for like, how long have we been saying that, Jim?
Hey, Jim's been doing it for a while.
Right.
But embracing it and being able to buy it and put it to use in your enterprise or in your portfolio, that's possible. We don't have to sit around and think about using AI. You can actually buy it and put it to use. So that.
Actually, one thing that leaps to my mind is in Luke's presentation last Monday, we did a great job, or he did a great job of explaining generative and all the strains of AI. It would have been really, in hindsight, have been really a good exercise if we had done that at the start of the month to kind of segment that AI isn't just one thing. It basically has the three strains of it, and they all have different powers, different superpowers. I found that intriguing, and as we work through what is generative, what is machine learning, and what is large language. Yeah, what are all those different strains? Then as the problems kind of come to you, you kind of which one of these pieces of AI am I going to use? So anyway, that in retrospect, that might have been almost a better opening one to get our minds ready, and then as we started working through this, and then we could ask more of the questions of the vendors: is this generative or is this machine learning? They offered that a lot, but it was certainly a bit of a blur in my mind, and we did a good job of clarifying that last Monday.
One of the interesting things to me, and it's usually can be used as a little bit of a measuring stick on something like this, a new technology, is how it is finding its way into the market. And by this, I mean, there are instances that we saw with some of the vendors that we had on where they were already doing something, creating products, and they're finding ways to integrate AI into their existing products to make them better. And then in the case of like Keith and Facil, it's a company separate from, dedicated to, existing because of AI, right? It's a different, it just goes to show that this is big enough that it's not just one company's technology. There are new companies, new economies being started, and it's getting adopted by existing companies, just like the Honeywell thing that you showed when we first started Fired Up. So again, just another sign that the train is rolling. Either get on it or get out from in front of it.
Or get run over, right?
Or get run over, yeah.
Okay, so we then spent a week on last week. This is on really sort of two topics. One is the sort of comparison between generative AI and machine learning, but looking at that from a legal perspective, which we weren't actually sure whether that would actually be interesting or worthwhile, but it ended up to be a really good way of thinking about the different pieces of AI. I certainly thought that was really sort of what I got out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was, this sort of difference that there is a very clear difference between generative AI and machine learning, right? And this is what generative AI produced for me when I asked it to explain to me what the difference between it and machine learning, and this is what we got. So my take out of this is generative AI is, as per the word, as per the name, generative, meaning it generates stuff. And it does that primarily for our consumption, for human consumption. If you think about all of the stuff that we ChatGPT and other things, we're using them to generate something for us to consume, right? Whereas machine learning is just learning stuff so that it can decide to do things. I think Luke was sort of the one that was sort of saying that if machine learning decides something, that's machine learning, but if it then needs to produce something, that then it starts to morph over into generative AI because it has to create something from that thing that it's been thinking about from the machine learning. So one way I was actually thinking about this over the weekend is that we've been talking about autonomous buildings for quite a bit. We did a session on it, I think, about a year ago. And it sort of occurred to me that if you have a truly autonomous building, which means that it's not going to be relying on humans to guide it and to make decisions, then you're not going to need any generative AI at all. It's all ML. Does that jive?
At what point does AI start utilizing generative AI for itself? So I think what you're referring to, if there's no interaction with humans, there's no new generation going on, nobody asking for something new and original. But at what point does AI start doing that on its own?
So would AI need to paint a picture so that another AI could see what it meant? No, it's going to give data. It's going to say 17 or whatever the relevant piece of information is.
If one of its goals is to maximize the user experience of a building, it might generate artwork for the walls and screens and so forth along the walls. And if it knows a particular customer is coming to visit, it could automatically be generating content specific to that.
The welcome notices that they put on kiosks, right?
Gone are the days of the little push the letters in the board to say welcome, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Actually, I always love the analogy. If you think of how two machines share a picture, and you think about how two humans share a picture, we actually generate the picture, then we send it to the other person looks at it, and then they have to generate it and figure out what we're talking about in their mind, and then they maybe make a change to it, you send it back. Two machines doing the same process, sends them the file, and he says, what's different about this file? And he says, oh, you moved this digit over here, and they don't even look at the picture. They miss that whole conversion thing, which is very complex for us. And it just becomes infinitely simpler for two machines to communicate than it does us.
Faster.
Yeah.
Significantly faster, because it doesn't have to do. I think that's maybe what you're sort of alluding to earlier, Jim, is that things change. And this is sort of one of the things that changes. I mean, it changes by reducing something by 99%, which is kind of, we don't do that kind of things normally. So these are kind of sort of just the bullet points that we talked about, the difference between generative AI and machine learning. Again, the purpose and methods and so any other thoughts where I'm going to stop my share and we can just have a open conversation about all of this.
I think that I think that where generative stops and machine learning starts will meld together over time. And or there will be other things, there'll be other techniques, but I think that those techniques will come together to form a greater whole. Then artificial intelligence will be even better and more pervasive. So instead of, generative just trying to guess the next word and coming up with ideas and deriving rule sets, this way machine learning rules will be applied to the generative background.
Yeah, I mean, you can really see where generative AI will take the output from machine learning and characterize for individuals what information they need to see, how they need to see it, when they need to see it, and so they'll create the experience for the users, not just in a single way, but in a very specific way for the audience and audiences that owner, operator, tenants possesses. And you won't have to have a staff to do that. It'll just be automatic. I think the thing overall that I'm sensing here is as AI gets adopted across, because it's being adopted and looked at everywhere, right? So what does it really mean in that sense? So product development has the promise of accelerating, not just accelerating, but being done at a lower price. So when you look at a product that you want to develop for a market, there's obviously a major investment from an R&D perspective. So that then determines, can I justify that level of R&D to get into that particular market? And if AI has the impact on product development that I think it may very well have, it changes the whole business planning process versus the traditional way that we plan, because we do head counts, we do man hours, we look at it in those terms, and with far less emphasis on the tools that may be available today, because we tend to think of it all as really brain power. That, yeah, fine, I've got computers to put the code into and to do the documentation into, but to actually generate the code and the reports and all of that through AI tools changes the equation for the amount of investment. And similarly, at the facility engineering level inside the building, the operations staff now, they can potentially do with fewer, but more significantly, they can start to offer features and information in a much more powerful way for no extra money compared to what they're putting out today. So the quality of the experience could go up substantially as a result of AI taking off in that sense, how building owners operate their buildings. So it's going to be really interesting. I think we all agree it's hard to see it, but fundamentally, when I look at its impact on and what it can do with information and how it can take that information and accelerate, it's going to be a very interesting time, because it will affect every single aspect of what we call business today, and that's why it's hard to predict, very hard to predict.
Yeah, and that's obviously the great fodder that we'll be hoping to dig into next month in May, trying to sort of figure out what are the options and what should we be staying away. And I think that'd be really, really, really interesting. And Keith just posted a message about Her, the film. I think we should all watch it or rewatch it if we haven't, because that's quite telling given this kind of conversation going on.
Yeah, there we go. That's what I was referring to earlier. Thanks, Keith.
Yeah. I kind of look at this AI as because of my back experience as a control loop, and if you kind of imagine it as the control of life loop, one thing that it becomes immediately obvious to me is that it doesn't have enough feedback of its own actions and recommendations. And I think that's just because it hasn't grown up yet. So that'll be an interesting thing as it makes that next step and they start to put more feedback from its own actions come out of the AI loop. The thing that intrigues me is that what is it's going to be, if it starts looking at itself, it will see capabilities that we can't see. Like basically what we do is we ask it a question and it brings back, I can do this. And we go, wow. And then it says, well, I knew I could do that. You didn't ask me that. But if it asks itself that own question, then it can actually grow faster and basically become a better control loop if you look at it in those simple terms. I don't know if that makes any sense, but if you can kind of see where I'm thinking with that.
I think what's sort of always interesting for me is that Ken's right, and yet Ken's asking that question as a human, right? The machines wouldn't even think about asking, because machines operate completely differently, because it's machine to machine. It's just, what do I need to do this, right? That you don't need to explain it. You don't need to try and verbalize it either in language or in picture. You have data.
Yeah, ultimately languages just get in the way. And again, I go back to my picture analogy that two machines talking about what's different in this picture. And then, machine one says, the
be a pixel.
300 bits.
These pixels are right. Yeah.
One bit's a zero, one bit's a none. That's the difference. Yeah. And we had to go all through a week's worth of work to try and find out what was different with these things. So it's simpler for the machines.
I think another interesting question as to what's coming is business model around a lot of what's going to happen with AI. Everyone's going to run headlong into it. There'll be some new value propositions, new applications developed around it. But how long until those things become table stakes? And how are people going to get paid for the development? I mean, it's a nice thing that development costs are going to go down, but you still, if you're running a business, you still need cost recovery around innovation. So how are customers going to respond to all of these new AI value propositions in the market, and how do you expect they'll pay for them?
But if you look at the attribute of AI that's sort of almost scaring us, speed, I would imagine that the thing that would pay for it is speed, meaning it can do a lot more of the thing that is of value than pre-AI days.
Right.
By a factor of 10 or 100 or whatever.
Yeah, that's
why how you actually monetize that. But
so we've looked at how products can lay out in terms of the smarter stack, Anto. Another slice that I suggest we maybe talk about is via the supply chain. If you look at the supply chain from the standpoint of the product being developed, designed, produced, manufactured, goes into a channel, which may have multiple levels, then it goes into a building, and then then there's some aspects of whether the facility engineers are responsible for it, or maybe they subcontract. But we have a fairly complex supply chain, and in each aspect of the supply chain, it'd be worthwhile to look at how AI is likely to impact that particular part of the supply chain, and then maybe that'll show what the potential might be to, as an example, we're trying to get building automation into the other 75% of the buildings that are out there after 20 years. And why aren't they there? Because they're too expensive. So if the supply chain gets positively impacted by AI at the different levels, and it's not just about making a piece of hardware that's cheaper, because, you know, when I talk to the contractors, 80% of their cost is their labor, 20% is their material. Okay, so if AI can reduce the labor by 50%, all of a sudden we're going to go in more buildings for the same amount of hardware. Okay, so that's, to me, a worthwhile discussion, is not just look at, you know, how it's going to improve by. Let's look at the whole picture in terms of supply chain and what is going to be the ultimate impact in that regard of AI.
In adjunct to that, before we started into this AI adventure, we were getting our heads into cloud native. And I'm not sure we all got our heads completely into cloud native as much as AI does, because I think AI may understand cloud native much better than we do. And when you ask it a question about how to do something, supply chain related or financial, it may see a whole new solution, because it's just a bunch of machines chatting up on the other side of these talking heads over here. And that could be kind of intriguing. And then back to Jim's question about the finances of it, I kind of flip back again to the old days of the .com, .bomb days, and I think we're back. Basically, what we're starting to see is a lot of money being thrown at AI that nobody has any earthly idea what it's going to do. And there's no doubt there's going to be a lot of crash and burns. But that's basically how .com and .bomb all worked out, and I can't really see that it's going to be much different than that.
So did everybody read Keith's latest post?
Yeah, to Jim's point and to Steve and to what Ken just said, better buildings, smarter buildings will be more effective and less costly. Not just to buy the technology to make them that way, but the buildings are terribly inefficient right now. Mm-hmm. And so using AI or using cloud native or using IBB or whatever, using more off-the-shelf components will allow the buildings to come into the right flight path. The competitiveness of buildings right now is terrible. So people will pay for the technology out of the savings of being more efficient. It's the small buildings, Steve, that we don't have technology in,
right,
are going to become more efficient places to work and play and everything, because they will have technology and AI that'll be helping keep them on the right flight path that they can't afford right now. And then those buildings are going to get really, really big, which that's going to be the thing. That's my prediction, is that small buildings are going to become really, really big because they're going to be less expensive to build and less expensive to maintain over time. Yeah. Because of AI and because of new
AI. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, because the supply chain, also from the consulting and architecture perspective, architects, consulting engineers, I'm saying look at the entire supply chain, because it's happening, guys. And,
yeah,
so it
was wondering
has the potential of really changing the whole complexion of what we do today.
Yeah, the supply chain in terms of vendors, channel to owners,
Yeah,
but there's also
right.
the life cycle chain of a building, which is designers, architects, developers, etc.
Right.
That's another chain. So we should look at it.
Another quick one, I think has a huge impact is we're an industry that is short 100,000 people or something like that. I think AI has the ability to create those where in other industries people are getting displaced with AI. We're actually in a situation that we need intellect, and if we can create that artificially, then we can actually achieve goals that we think why we would hire a new person. If we can eliminate hiring that new person by using AI, it's going to let us get to a solution faster. So I think that could have a big impact as well.
Yeah, let us wrap on that, because we need to wrap, and just bearing in mind that AI is already cloud native, so we don't have to teach it cloud nativity. So well, thanks all for this conversation.
Yes,
thank you.
It was born. AI was born in the cloud.
That's right.
Native.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. Have
Take
a great
care,
week.
everybody.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.